Hi everybody, welcome to the Oldish. If you're getting older or you have parents who are getting older and you look after them, this is the place to be because we talk about everything having to do with aging here at the Oldish. My name is Karen Brown. I'm getting older. Let's face it, no two people age the same way. But at this point in my aging, I am the publisher and editor of the Oldish, and I welcome all of you here. This is the place to chat, as I said, about everything aging, so please do like us on Facebook and you can find these broadcasts and everything that we post as well. Today, we're going to talk about the positives and negatives that surround our brain and the impact that that kind of thinking, one way or the other, has on our ability to move forward with positivity and age successfully. Do you know people who are negative all the time? Full of drama? All the bad things seem to happen to them and they want to tell you all about it. They know everybody who is sick, dead, and dying at any given time. These are people who are focused on the past. Now, it's not that bad things can't happen and be discussed, but you know as well as I do that these people are discussing negativity ad nauseum. They drag it around with them like it's happening right this moment, and they can't get rid of it. They suck energy from everybody around them with the negativity. We've all got parts of our past that we would prefer had happened another way, paths that we wish we had chosen differently. We should have gone right instead of left, things we wish we hadn't said or done. That's normal. We're human after all. But to dwell on it constantly, a loop in our brain, that's injurious to ourselves. And it's just this bad cloud of energy that we drag along with us, like Pigpen on Charlie Brown. It's this constant swirl of bad stuff. We all know people who have had horrendous lives and have endured things that nobody should ever have to endure. We all know people who have suffered and they've taken, in some cases, that experience. They've learned from it and they move forward with positivity. They have learned how to be kind, compassionate, resourceful individuals who support other people and help others to avoid the experiences that they have had. They create foundations and they become speakers, or they write books, or they just become these sources of such amazing compassion that there's this halo of love around them all the time. We also know people who have had really wonderful lives. Nothing bad ever seems to happen to them, and they're just little rays of sunshine that wander around, and you can see them coming a mile away because the light shines so bright. Almost a decade ago, I had an experience that, for me, triggered a wish to get rid of all the negativity in my life. People who were sucking energy and bringing that cloud all the time, manipulating me into doing things their way because, going here because they said so, responding to things the way that they needed to have things responded to. It took time, but I eventually got rid of all of that, every single bit of it. It was hard, but to this day, I remember waking up one morning and feeling like the weight of the world was lifted off of me. And I made a pact with myself not to let that bad energy back into my life again. I wanted to move forward. Instead of dwelling on the negative, rehearsing what I'd say, reimagining conversations, trying to reframe the past. You know, you've done it. We've all done it. A conversation happens, and you rethink it later and say, gee, I should have said this, or I wish I'd said that, or if only I had done this, then that wouldn't have happened. But you know what? It did happen. So how does this impact aging? Well, growing older, I find, can bring with it all kinds of woulda, shoulda, coulda. Lives full of regret for the path not chosen, people not pursued. The reality is, as I said, it happened. It's the past, and it needs to be in the past, not without learning the lessons. Definitely learn the lessons, because for some of us, we had to learn those lessons. but put it in the past. For me, that meant choosing to experience things differently and get rid of all of those people who were bringing negativity to me. It wasn't my responsibility, I realized, to change them or to tell them how to live their lives or to mother them. I really don't want to spend my time listening to people on this endless loop of problems that are never resolved, because the reality ends up being that they don't want to resolve the problem. They are happy mired in the muck. That's where they have to stay. You know, and that makes them happy, by the way. There are people who are just happy wallowing in that muck. These are not people that I want to associate myself with. They really aren't. I don't want to be in their muck. One of my favorite expressions comes from Maya Angelou, who said, "When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change." It's become a bit of a mantra for me. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When I changed the way I looked at things, it was amazing how much more positivity all of a sudden flowed into and through my life. Because I let it. I actually let it. Just because aging has been done a certain way doesn't mean that aging has to be done this way going forward. Just because it's been done that way doesn't mean you have to do it going forward. What I realized through all of this was that I had actually retrained my brain. There's lots of science out there about it, but of course I wasn't ready to hear it the way that I became ready to hear it. Once I was ready to hear it and I realized that I had actually retrained my brain, it was life-changing. And you can do that too. Look at the way that you want your life to be moving forward. What do you want it to look like? As we've talked about many times on this show, better than 90% of people want to and will age in place, by themselves, with their adult children, with partners, somehow, some way. Think about what that would look like for you. And then imagine what steps you need to take to make your vision your reality. Now, yesterday I posted a TED Talk that one of our readers and a friend of mine had sent me. And it had to do with a woman who was part of a group that saw living with dementia differently. They weren't willing to accept the fact that because something had always been done that way, it needed to be done that way moving forward. So they figured out for themselves what this would look like for their parents, for their neighbors, and they made it happen. They built a dementia village in Holland that has become very famous. And while it is a radically different concept, what's really important to note here is that they completely shifted the paradigm on the same funding model that every other facility in Holland runs on. All right, they're not spending any more money. They're spending the same amount of money. They're just choosing to prioritize how they spend that money. And it's very, very different. Dementia villages are now being built in Canada. There's the village in Langley, BC. Comox has one coming out on Vancouver Island. Metro Vancouver has one in the planning stages as well. In the US, Glenner Town Square is the first of several dementia villages in California. On a smaller scale, people a little closer to home for me, like Doug and Marty Tyndall, are reimagining how they want their aging process to look. And they're planning some co-op housing with a larger home that will have about 6 separate units, but with some common spaces. And as I say, this is co-op living. Each person will have, or couple, will have their private space and a little living area, but the common spaces will probably be things like kitchens and a living room or a rec room, that sort of thing. It's modeled on a similar co-op house in Kamloops, BC called Rare Birds. You can look any of those up. Rare Birds has its own website, actually. I was on it yesterday. Concepts like these take into account things like social engagement, inclusion, sustainability, and privacy, but with the ability for other people to keep an eye on the community, no matter how small. Tiny home communities are popping up all over the place. Now, that can be something of a difficult task based on the planning model that you have in your area. It would be very difficult in the area where I live because they just don't allow that many homes on one lot. That needs to change for sure. We published an article the other day about seniors who choose to live on ships or in hotels. That's clearly for people who have a bit more money, certainly than I do, but the concept of living your life on a ship cruising the world, it's very romantic, isn't it? The point is this: draw a line from your life as it is now to where you want it to be 10, 15, 20 years down the road. What does it look like? What are the steps that you have to take to get you there? How independent do you want to be? How dependent do you imagine yourself being? Do you imagine yourself living in your own home? What does your home have to look like? We've talked a lot the last couple of weeks about fall prevention and the things that you have to do within your home to make it safe for you to continue living there. That's a line that you can draw. What do I have to do to my home to make it safe for me to live in? Do I live in a community where it's going to be independent for me? In other words, do I have access when I can't drive anymore to the drugstore, to the grocery store, to the doctor's offices? Is there ready access to public transit? If there isn't, and you want to have that level of independence, what does that look like for you? And what are the steps you need to take to get there? See the opportunities. Be excited about what the possibilities are in the future. And put the past in the past, because that is absolutely where it belongs. There you go, folks. Independence and positivity. That's our message for today. Thank you for joining us here today. I do invite you to join us next Wednesday at high noon. We're on daylight savings time now, and we will have another edition of the Oldish TV show. If you haven't yet signed up for our newsletter, scroll down a bit in our feed and you will see the link to our March newsletter that actually talks about what we did here on the Oldish in February. On the left side of your screen, if you are on a desktop computer, you'll see a link that says sign up for email. Click that and you will be able to be signed up for our next newsletter, which will come out in early April. We did a free giveaway in February too, and there will be other free giveaways coming up, so don't miss those. Like us on Facebook, like I said at the top of the show, subscribe to us and you'll be sure to be notified about our shows. If you prefer Instagram, Twitter, or Pinterest, we're there too. Take care of one another, everybody. Please do remember that it does take a village to age a senior.